Sheriff, this is what we the people are asking this morning. Disarm the Park Service.
We're faced with a decision to either get the cattle or be the cattle.
But we're staying here until they're gone.
We want those arms picked up, don't we?
Yeah! The crowd is now moving forward toward the barrier. The police have been telling everybody they're going to shoot if we don't move back.
As we approach the one-year anniversary of the standoff at the Bundy Ranch, I want to take another look at what happened, especially in light of the lies and slander from media like Glenn Beck and the dangerous characterization by Obama, Harry Reid, Homeland Security, that labeled the community standing together against brutality as domestic terrorists. On April 7, 2014, Paul Joseph Watson wrote an article, Armed Feds Prepare for Showdown with Nevada Cattle Rancher, with the subtitle, Ruby Ridge-Style Standoff Brewing, as Bundy says he's prepared to be killed. The property rights dispute had been going on for decades, but now things were beginning to come to a head. Hundreds of federal officials, aided by helicopters, low-flying aircraft, hired cowboys, began rounding up Bundy's cattle the preceding weekend as Bundy accused them of trespassing. And as supporters from the local community and protesters headed to the area to demand that the feds back off, the BLM had created a First Amendment area out in the middle of nowhere where demonstrators could voice their concerns, but nowhere else. This area right here, this small area here, was cordoned off with orange temporary construction barriers marked for free speech zone. It just shows you how quickly your free speech zones can disappear. When you allow them to be contained to a very small area, it's gone. But we're here and we want to tell the BLM something about how upset we are with what's going on here, but there's no government agency here to listen to us. That's the whole reason you don't confine people to remote areas from what's happening. Not only had the federal agents been confiscating Bundy's cattle, they had also set up agents with sniper rifles, pointed at the ranchers, pointed at the protesters. The crowd had been building throughout the week, and on Saturday there was a huge crowd. To defuse it, the sheriff came in the morning to address the crowd and tell them that the powers that be had graciously consented to allow the last rancher remaining in business in the area to continue grazing. Never mind that he had had most of his cattle rustled by the army of BLM contractors for the past several weeks.
With that being said, I believe a press release has already been put forth that the BLM is going to cease this operation. The Gold Butte allotment will be reopened to the public.
Much to the surprise of the sheriff, Bundy said that wasn't good enough.
Sheriff, this is what we the people are asking this morning. Disarm the Park Service.
Right. Yeah.
At Lake Mead and Red Rock Park and all other parks that the federal government claims they have jurisdiction over.
Yeah.
Take your county bulldozers and loaders and tear down the entrance places, where they ticket us and where they enter us and make us citizens pay their fees. You take down you get the county equipment out there and tear those things down this morning.
Yes, sir. Immediately. Yeah.
What they wanted was for him to exercise his authority as the only lawful law enforcement in the area and to disarm the BLM agents and contractors who had been pointing their sniper rifles at the protesters and ranchers, confiscate their weapons, tell them to leave the area, and then stack the weapons on stage. Bundy gave him 1 hour to do so. At the end of the time limit, Bundy announced that it looked like the sheriff wasn't going to do anything. No one was surprised. But what did surprise us and surprise the federals was his announcement.
I guess he's not coming, so I guess we had presents. We thought we had a sheriff here, but evidently we don't have a sheriff here. We're going to go and take the rest of them out of the compound trails up here above the freeway.
I was one of the first ones to get down to the area where the standoff would occur.
Okay, people are now moving. They stopped for prayer.
They had vehicles, they had guns that were pointing at us, and they had shields. And they had a loudspeaker that was announcing that they would shoot if we did not leave the area. The only mainstream media that was in attendance was one cameraman from Fox News. He desperately wanted to get over to the BLM and interview them, but he was scared to death, as you can see in this video, that they were going to shoot him. He kept announcing that he was with Fox News. He pulled up his shirt to show that he wasn't armed. They kept telling him to go back. They did not want him to come to interview them. They were in a fighting stance. They had 80 different cars, each of them with just one BLM agent.
Now, it's a standoff. I've got a count of 107 vehicles.
107, okay.
Going on the road.
That's
and, you know, the thing of it is all 107 those vehicles were armed with armed army.
Yes.
That always fascinated me.
Absolutely.
Why would the State Highway Patrol allow an army like that onto their highway, and then why would that army be able to pass through the city of Mesquite without, you know, any resistance, through the state of Arizona without any resistance, through the port of entry into Utah without any resistance, and that army disappeared in the state of Utah? And not one media, no question. That army went across the United States without one question asked.
An army of BLM agents, 107 cars of armed men. This is exactly what the Posse Comitatus Act prohibits. It's not just a prohibition of the military being used for law enforcement. Understand that Posse Comitatus is Latin for the power of the community. The Posse Comitatus Act prohibits the president from usurping the true Posse Comitatus, the true power of the community, with his own posse of armed federal agents. There were clear distinctions, too, from Ferguson and other places where we've seen protests about a government that's out of control. In Ferguson, businesses in the community were destroyed and burned. As InfoWars has pointed out, in Ferguson, these looters were coming from outside of the community. They were not the core protesters. And of course, the same thing could have happened at Bundy Ranch. I believe the reason that it didn't was because the militia threw out people who were dangerous or provocateurs. People like Jared Miller, who later shot 2 cops in Vegas. But rather than give the militia credit for expelling people like Jared Miller, the media used it to demonize them. Another difference about the Bundy Ranch was that there was a clear, achievable objective. The people were peaceful, but they were determined.
The police have been telling everybody they're going to shoot if we don't move back. People are moving forward with their hands in the air, holding flags with both hands in the air. It's a mixture of people on foot, as you can see, people on foot, and cowboys.
They decided they're going to pull those pins, but it's only going to be Bundy and his son. That's it.
It's the people or not, and you guys need to leave.
Okay.
You need to leave. That's the
and I'm
term.
telling you, you need to de-escalate the situation.
No,
I'm
you need
imploring
to leave.
upon you your responsibility to de-escalate. Listen.
You are on Nevada State property.
Okay.
And it is time for you. No,
There's a time
the time
for us
is
to
now.
We're doing that.
No, the
but
time
you need
is
to push
now.
these people back so they can do it safely. Push them back so they can do it
You
safely.
leave. Cattle are coming in 30 minutes, but we're staying here until they're gone. Okay? That's what we're doing.
I can back some of these guys up if you promise they won't run me and my partner down.
Whatever you tell us to do,
All right.
as long as it's not to compromise this mission, we will do. You have authority.
All I ask you to do is just hang tight.
Okay. So we're all right where we're at?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is 1776. No, it's not.
That's right. What happened, what we call the Boston Massacre, was an angry mob. You can call them a bunch of drunk rowdies. It's just like guys that like barroom brawls. I just love being in a fight. There's guys like that. They're belligerent. They'll fight anybody.
We were misrepresented by powerful voices.
So these people who hold themselves out to be patriots are not. They're nothing more than domestic terrorists.
We rode over there. We didn't come charging, guns a-blazing. We were not armed. There were a couple of cowboys that had rifles in their boots, their saddle boots. There was 1 or 2 riders that may have had a sidearm on their persons. None of them drew them from their scabbards, from the boots.
I know Glenn Beck wasn't there, but he can see from the videos taken by the people who were there that nearly all of the people at the standoff were not armed, and those that were had them holstered, even as the bureaucrats, all of whom were armed, pointed weapons and threatened to shoot. People with no guns in their hands, marching in defiance to troops threatening to shoot them. That was in the spirit of Gandhi and Martin Luther King. But let us not forget that it was Gandhi who said, among the many misdeeds of British rule in India, history will look upon the act of depriving a whole nation of arms as the blackest. Whether or not you agree with Cliven Bundy's position on his grazing rights, everyone should be appalled at the conduct of the BLM, its agents, and its hired contractors. Free speech containment areas, government snipers pointed at protesters and ranchers for weeks, violent, brutal confrontations with peaceful protesters, all manifestations of a government that is dangerously out of control. The Bundy standoff wasn't just a news event. What we saw with the showdown was that there are still Americans that won't be treated like slaves. There are still Americans that will stand with their neighbors against an army of federal bureaucrats and contractors that threaten and brutalize them. What we covered in the rural West was a government out of control and acting provocatively, as we would see again in just a couple of months in Ferguson. Unlike Ferguson, the crowd would not turn into a mob attacking its neighbors, burning their businesses. The community stood together with each other resolutely and in a determined way made it clear that they were not looking for a fight, but they weren't going to back down either. What the Bundy family and their neighbors demonstrated to the nation was that power truly lies with the community, and that when the community stands together, neighbor with neighbor, against a violent and brutal government, the thugs will back down and slink away. Unlike Glenn Beck and Obama, Thomas Jefferson would have approved of what happened at the Bundy Ranch standoff. He wrote in 1787, "What country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that his people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms." For InfoWars Nightly News, I'm David Knight.
Hi, I'm Alex Jones. Most of you know me as a syndicated radio host and documentary filmmaker. When I got on air 20 years ago, I was only 21 years old. And if you go back 20 years ago, I weighed 180 pounds. I jogged 6 miles every other day. I lifted weights 5 days a week. I could swim 2-3 miles. Then I discovered the New World Order, the globalists, their agenda. I started an access television show. Shortly after that, I was able to get a local radio show. I was so dedicated to my work and hanging around with radio guys that I began drinking. I began smoking cigars and then even cigarettes. I transformed from looking like a white Bruce Lee to looking like a Jabba the Hutt. It was my friend Tommy Pilata, a film producer. He said, "Alex, you're killing yourself not caring about your body. You're gonna end up having a heart attack when you're 50 years old. You gotta stop." And so I began a journey 5 years ago to shed the almost 100 pounds. The first 3 years, I lost about 25 pounds. It was super hard. I started taking Super Male Vitality and saw dramatic results in just a few weeks. When I added to the mix the key products developed by Dr. Group for InfoWarsLife.com, the results were incredible. The problem was, though, I'd never been a vitamin and mineral and supplement taker before, so I kept forgetting to do it. Just a month and a half ago, I asked the crew to take a photo of me in the same lighting to see what I could do in just a month and a half by taking the Oxy powder, by taking the Survival Shield X2 and the other InfoWarsLife.com products to see if it accelerated it. And it did. This is what happened in just 45 days. We took this photo back there in the back office, and I already lost a lot of weight, but I lost another 6 pounds with the Oxy powder and the other products at InfoWarsLife.com. And this photo was just taken a few days ago. And it wasn't just the acceleration of weight loss. My muscle mass increased, along with my stamina and overall energy and libido. Take the InfoWarsLife.com challenge today and transform your body. I'm getting back to where I was 20 years ago. We've got to get our temple straight before we can go out and fight the globalists, and that's what these products have helped me do. Check them out today at InfoWarsLife.com, or give our crew a call. They can answer all your questions or tell you about any of the specials at 888-253-3139. Today is the day to take the InfoWarsLife.com challenge and to secure your bottle of Super Male or Super Female Vitality.